Right, well, welcome to the second of our videos featuring the Peony Garden Suite. And for today's video, I've got an iron and my stamp set and the embossing folder. And this is a technique some of you may have seen me do before. But what I'm going to use is some wax paper. Now, wax paper over in the States is something that you get off the supermarket shelves, and they use it to wrap their sandwiches and things. We don't tend to find it in our supermarkets here. If you want it here, you're going to have to go searching somewhere like the Craft Warehouse or Hobbycraft or somewhere like that. It tends to be, or get it off of Amazon. It tends to be more of a craft tool over here, because crafters tend to use it for various things. So we're going to be using some wax paper and our embossing folder to do a bit of wax resist. Now, if you're local to me and you want to give this a go and you haven't got any wax paper, do drop me a message and we can put you some in a kit or whatever, so that you can have a little go at this. If you haven't got any, try it and see if you like it. Okay, so we've got our Dainty Diamonds embossing folder, which we found is part of this beautiful Peony suite, and I'm going to put my wax paper in there. Now, any of you that use this Dainty Diamonds embossing folder will know that it's got lots of little dots in it. So that it can sometimes really grip onto your paper. So I have to say that the first time I did this, I was a bit, oh, is it going to chew up my wax paper? But I think the fact that the wax paper has got wax on it, obviously, as the name would suggest, means that it doesn't actually stick to the embossing folder. Watch this go through this machine now and stick to the embossing folder. Of course it's not going to. So I've just wound that through the embossing folder. And as I take this wax paper off, you can see all the little holes in it, and you've got this gorgeous dotty design on your wax paper. Very bizarre. Right, so what we're going to do now, I've got my little iron plugged in. About the only ironing I ever do. I have to get it out every now and then. You can use your standard household iron with this. Just make sure that you put something between your cardstock and your iron, because you don't want to get wax on the bottom of your iron. So I'm going to lay my embossing sheet down. So I've put it so that the raised dotty side, well, let's turn that the card over, it's got a bit of a mark on it. The raised dotty side is facing down onto the card, and now I'm just going to take a little bit of scrap paper, lay it over the top. You just want something just to be in between the bottom of your iron and your cardstock. So what you want to do is you want to iron it enough to melt the wax on the paper, but not to sort of completely smidge it and squidge it all about the place. So I think that's probably enough. Now I can just see a faint outline on that card. You possibly can't, but I can just see a faint outline on that card. So I'm going to turn my iron off and move it out of my way, because I don't really want to lean on it. So these cute little irons, I had this with an encaustic art kit. But you can get all sorts of little irons for sewing and all sorts of things, but they are just useful in the craft room rather than a full-size iron. But there is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't use a full-size iron. Now I'm going to put that wax paper to one side, because having ironed it, there isn't very much else you can do with it unless you wanted to use it as a layer in something, as some sort of texture background. I'm now going to take a sponge brayer. Now my sponge brayer might be still a tad damp, we'll see. And I'm going to take some grey granite ink, and I'm going to ink up my brayer. And you want to be rolling it in one direction. You can use any sorts of brayers for this. It doesn't have to be a sponge one. If you've got a metal brayer, you can use it, but you can equally just use a bit of sponge or something and sponge your colour on. But let's let's sponge down some ink on our background. And as I say, I'm using the grey granite. And I'm just going to keep, I really must get myself some new sponge brayers. My sponge brayers have been around for a little while. And they're now more like a sponge on a stick than they are a brayer. But it's still laying the colour down quite nicely, thank you very much. And hopefully what you're going to be seeing is that pattern in the background starting to pop out. And obviously the more ink I lay down on the top, the more that colour is going to pop. And with your sponge brayer you can go backwards and forwards in one way and the other. You can just pop these little sponges off the end and wash them out. And with each sponge brayer, I think it's 2 handles and 3 sponges you get with each little kit. And just keep building that up until you're happy with the colour on the background there. So there we've got, so it's not raised, it's a flat piece of card, but you've got that wax resist going on there, creating that background. I love that technique. You can try that with all sorts of embossing folders, in all sorts of colours. You could do multi-tonal colours on the background. Yeah, but good fun, a good additional use for your embossing folders, something a little bit different to do with them. Right, and a great technique. As I say, some of you may well have seen me do that before, but it's one I love and it's a good reminder. Now I'm just looking around because I had, here it is, I had a little doily somewhere. Now I've started to sponge some ink on this, but I'm going to put a bit more on. So I've taken one of the vellum doilies and I'm going to take some petal pink ink. I'm going to want to make it a bit darker still, I think. I'm going to sponge some ink on it. So I have already put some on. I've got a couple of little landlocked bits in the middle there. And add some petal pink to our doily. Now you can see here, this one here, I hadn't washed this the sponge, so you can see where there was still some green left on the sponge, whereas that one is more grey. Let's have a little look. Let's bring our papers out. Might trim this down a little further and have it a little bit smaller so that we've got some paper peeping out underneath. Oh, I may do it the other way around. Have a panel of paper. No, because I think we lose the doily if we do it that way. Let's have a little look. I'm going to take, I think, some basic grey. So I'm going to bring in the darker grey. And I'm going to cut a mat of basic grey that's 14.4 by 10. My little piece of white card here that I've done my embossed resist on is actually 13.9 by 9.5, but I'm going to cut that down a bit more in a minute, I think, because I'm going to bring in some of this paper and I'm going to make that 13.9 by 9.5. I'm going to take a bit more of this basic grey and I'm going to cut it down to 12.9 by 8.5. So I've come down a centimetre each side. I think we need to come down a bit more, don't you? Let's make it 7.5 by 11.9. So we've now come down 2 centimetres from our paper panel. That's quite nice, isn't it? We've got a nice border then of our paper panel. So that is 11.9 by 7.5. This needs to be 7 by 11.4. Let's just chop that off and chop that off. And there we have our embossed panel in the centre, grey granite. We might decide not to have it central, we might decide to have it to one side. We have our doily. Yeah, perhaps we will come central. So our doily comes either side. And perhaps have some of our ribbon coming across the centre. And then we want a flower on the top. So let's have a look at our floral images, and I think let's go with the big flower. Shall we have our big flower? Sort of sitting on the top there, with our doily peeking out either side. That would be rather lovely, wouldn't it? So, nice big block. And I think I'm going to take my StazOn ink. Black one. Definitely don't want a brown one today. Let's have I got a bit of Whisper White that's big enough to stamp that on? Yes. So let's ink up this gorgeous big stamp. Tap, tap, tap all over. And then press it down. Isn't that beautiful? Now in the dies, we have a die that's going to cut that out for us. So let's do that. Rebuild my big shop, having done some embossing with it. There we go, there's our die cut flower. And now I'm going to take, so either a water brush or just an ordinary paintbrush and some water, whatever you've got to hand. And I'm going to watercolour this peony. So let's bring in our petal pink. Give this a good squeeze. And just add in a bit of water so we've got some paint. And let's lay some colour down. If you've got a re-inker, you could just squeeze a drop of re-inker into a paint palette. And you can make your painting as complicated or as easy as you like. You can, just by laying down some colour, it's looking beautiful. I'm actually going to take a block and just squidge some of this colour onto a block. Use that as my paint palette because I've got a little bit more intensity then. Now, I didn't stamp this onto shimmery white card. Had I have done, it would be more tolerant of water. So I can't afford to put too much water on this one, because it will affect the surface of the card if you add too much water in. So I'm trying to keep my brush as dry as I can. But you can solve that problem by using, if you've got some shimmery white card or a bit of watercolour card, use that instead, and then you can add as much water, throw as much water at it as you like. Let us now, we could go grey granite on the leaves and stick with, in fact I think I might do that, stick with that colour palette. Let's just tap some grey onto my block, because this is sort of quite a greeny grey sort of colour, and it will tie it all in with the paper and the background. But obviously you could also use any of the greens that you've got in your stash. think actually I've painted that one pink, and I should think it should be sort of this grey colour. What I could do with that is I've got my watercolour pencils here. I might come in with the Calypso Coral one and just add in, this is just titivating really, but if you have watercolour pencils, maybe that you've got, if you haven't got our Stampin' Up ones yet, you may have different make, you may have some that the children have had in the years gone by, or just add in a little bit of shading with your watercolour pencil. And where the card is still wet, that sort of blends quite nicely. Might just take somewhere let's go sort of old olive. Just going to add in a bit of green. The dog's decided it's raining and he's just come in and shook himself over me. Thank you very much. Just going to add in again a bit of watercolour pencil. Just to add in a bit of extra shading. Okay, that just helps it to pop a little bit. So let's create a card base. A bit of thick Whisper White. Hello, puppy. He's come to tell us it's raining. It's raining out there. So let's make a tent fold one. So I'm going to score this at, as I get through quite a few card bases, I might as well make up 2 card bases while I'm cutting this in half, and one will be sitting ready to use when we need it. Oh, it won't be if we don't cut it all the way through, will it? Oh, that's very slightly fuzzy down there. Let's see if we can just take the smallest edge off of it just to unfuzz. Okay, so I think the first thing we'll do is find our glue, and we'll stick our DSP for this beautiful pink poppy print. We could even add in another P there and make it a petal pink poppy print. We'll add that onto our basic grey, and we'll do the same with this. We'll put our embossed, wax resist embossed background onto some basic grey. I'm going to stick those layers on flat because I want to wrap some ribbon round And this is going to come across here. I'm just going to put some little spots of glue across this centre part, because I know I'm going to wrap some ribbon around there. Now I just saw a little bits that hadn't popped out just there. Because the thing with vellum, of course, is sticking it onto anything. I could just do with coming down a little smidge. Not quite even top and bottom. It's better. So let's take our shimmery, grey granite shimmery ribbon, and we're going to wrap some of that around the centre there. Let's snip that off, and then we'll stick it down on the back with some tear and tape. So named because it's tape that you just tear and then stick down. So tear it and then tape it. Got that. Coming across the middle. And we can stick that to that card front. There's some quite nice textures and things going on in there. We have our peony that I think we're going to pop up onto some dimensionals so that that's standing a bit proud. So let's just give that a bit of a curl. Bit of a shape. We'll pop some dimensionals on the back. We'll just snip some little bits so that put a bit there for that leaf. A bit for that stalk. Let's have that bit coming up there. Okay, I think that's all ready to be stuck on now. Take these backs off. And about there, I think. So we need a greeting. What did we go with the first one? My thoughts are with you. I think this one we will go So Sorry for Your Loss. Does seem to lend itself to a sympathy card. I'm going to take my basic grey ink. And I've got a bit of Whisper White somewhere. and just moving some of my bits out the way. I'm just thinking about what, oh, that's what I'm looking for my tasteful labels on the top. I may have to move that because I may have, yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out and then I'm going to stamp that again in our little banner. So let's cut out that little stitched banner from the tasteful labels, but obviously you can cut your own banner. You could use another label punch or something that you've got. Add that in the top there. A couple of dimensionals. I think we'll have it sitting so that it's just under that first layer, like that. And then let's take our pickup tool, and I think this time I'm just going to take some of these. So they've got a bit of sparkle to them, but they're clear ones. And to add some into the flower petals. They're almost like drops of dew. Just a bit of sparkle on there. Now you could add in a bow, but actually I think as we've made this up as a sympathy card, I think I quite like that. You could add a bow. But I think I quite like that sort of, if I was making it a birthday card or something, I might add a bow. But I think as we're making it a sympathy card, I think that sort of more clean and simple elegance is probably more in keeping with the style of the card. So there we go, a bit of wax resist embossing and some sponging of your vellum sheet, of your vellum square. So I hope you've enjoyed that card. I hope you don't need one and that you transfer it into an anniversary or a birthday or a thank you, because it would work for all of those. But occasionally we do need sympathy cards, so it's good to have something that we can call on. So see you again next time.